Hello! Welcome to Custom Commander Records, the channel dedicated to creating and reviewing custom cards specifically for Commander. Today is the first video of my new weekly series that I'll be calling Commander Catalogue. In these videos, I'll be creating new custom commanders that I believe would be interesting for people to play with and that I enjoy. With this introduction out of the way, allow me to go over the basic structure of this video series. The sections of this video will go as follows. First, I'll be going over the inspirations that led me to creating the specific card for today. Second, I'll be going over the design process by revealing some previous iterations of my card's design at various stages. Third, I'll have a segment dedicated showing off the custom commander in its final form. Fourth, I'll be discussing potential cards that would work well in a deck built around my custom card. And lastly, fifth, I'll be giving my final thoughts on the overall card design. With the basic outline of this video out of the way, let's begin the first episode of Commander Catalogue. Now, in creating today's card, I wanted to look for underdeveloped spaces and colors. I particularly liked building commanders that are unique, such as Lelia, the Blade Reforged, Esmira, Holy Avenger, or Toshiro Umizawa. I was looking at a lot of bulk cards from Kaladesh that I owned and saw the card Fortuitous Find. Interested and curious, I looked through Scryfall and found out that there were only a few cards which reference returning artifacts from your graveyard. But despite that, I found that in my research, there are quite a lot of random black cards that synergize a lot with artifacts, but no specific black commander to lead people in that direction. So I decided to create an artifact-based commander in black. When thinking about artifact-based decks, I think of three main types: combo-based, value-based, and Voltron-based. Now from these three choices, I decided on Voltron, a style of deck where you try to win dealing 21 points of combat damage with your commander to each other player. Now while I do think that either a combo or value-based deck could be interesting, I think that it fits better being a Voltron-based deck, because in black, a commander taking a bunch of artifacts to themselves seems pretty in line with how black wants to take everything for themselves. I looked for some special things that equipments have, and saw the ability Living Weapon, and immediately thought this would fit perfectly with a black-aligned commander using artifacts. With all these ideas, I just had to create the card, but that leads to the question: how would all these ideas look together when on a specific commander? This leads me into the previous forms of my custom card that I previously had. For today's card, the card type and name were the easiest parts of it. I knew that if I was basing my card off Living Weapon, the creature would have to be somewhere on Phyrexia, on a Phyrexian typed card, because of the new errata of Phyrexian as a card type. There were a couple humans with the type of Human Artificer on the plane in previous sets, and I would have named this with a type line of Phyrexian Human Artificer, but it takes up a lot of space. Therefore, I simply left it as Phyrexian Human. Next, the name. I wanted a name with alliteration and to have a hard consonant sound coming from the letter K, so I came up with the name Mazakiel, and I really loved how it sounded. Now, as you'll see in the first version of my card that I'll be showing, the original name was Mazakiel the Malefactor. However, since I said I wanted more alliteration, I changed it to Mazakiel Metallic Malefactor, and that name stuck. The main issues with this card came with the cost, its abilities, and its power and toughness. These are the most difficult parts for me designing it, because I want to make this card and all future cards I create to be within the realm of possibility of being playable, fair, and real. Therefore, I went to deciding the ability before deciding on other factors, like the cost or its power and toughness. As you can see here, this was the original form of the card. Mazakiel the Malefactor had the text of, whenever an equipment card is cast, that player creates a 0/0 black germ creature token and attaches that equipment to it. It also had the ability of, whenever a creature dies, if it had an equipment attached to it, you may attach that equipment to Mazakiel the Malefactor. Now while this was a good place to start, I felt that the card at this stage had three major problems. Firstly, I neglected to have the first ability only affect spells you cast. I didn't realize it until I looked the design over another day and realized this fact. Even though I had intended for it to just affect your spells, it also affected your opponents. This meant that you, as the owner of Mazakiel, would get free value and could steal people's things for no cost. And since my philosophy in cards is that I don't want to create cards that grief your opponent, I felt that had to be changed. Secondly, I don't like how simple the card looked. It's inventive and new for black, but it didn't seem to have enough oomph to make it feel legendary. And thirdly, it didn't have an ability that I was originally focusing on. I wanted a card that did something like Fortuitous Find, something that interacted with the artifacts in your graveyard in a certain way. So I rewent and made the new form of the card. Now this was the second major form of the card. The text now accommodates for spells you are casting rather than everyone's equipment spells, and changes to become whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control. The second ability also only cares about creatures you control now. I have also added the line of, for 2 generic mana, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now while it does do what I set it out to do, it now came with new issues. This card now had some bad play patterns and testing. I didn't like that there was an easy combo of having Ashnod's Altar, sacrificing the token, and bringing it back for 2 mana, while having infinite die triggers with a payoff, like Blood Artist. That's not really that fun. In addition, I found it was very easy to keep returning an artifact and having a sacrifice outlet to equip cards for free, with high equip costs. I also didn't like how the rules worked with the new text. Now it affected equipment entering the battlefield under your control. It had an unintended side effect of creating 2 germ tokens when equipment with living weapon entered the battlefield, which was not what I wanted. So after a couple more tries, I created a finished and final design I was mostly proud of. With its previous iterations out of the way, here's the final form of Mazakiel. This form of Mazakiel, Metallic Malefactor, solves some of the issues I had previously. Firstly, I reverted the text back to a cast trigger, so that there wouldn't be any weird interactions where putting an equipment into play creates 2 0/0 black germ creature tokens. Secondly, I added a cost to the second ability, so that would be more in line with what I think is reasonable for this type of card, since free equipping is pretty powerful. And lastly, I made the last ability need colored mana and only be able to be activated once each turn, so that no infinite combos could happen as easily. With all these fine-tunings, I felt that the mana cost and power could now be determined. I decided to base it off a similar artifact commander that makes tokens, Kemba Ka Regent. I didn't want Soul Ring to play much into casting this spell first, so I kept it very parallel to Kemba and made it 1 generic and 2 black pips. Now with that small aside out of the way, allow me to go over how I chose the art. If I had to choose a card art that would work with the feel of what I wanted, it already exists. I would have wanted a card art similar to Phyrexian Crusader from Mirrodin Besieged. Its art coming from the Eric Deschamps, and Eric, I'm very sorry if I butchered your name. However, I didn't really want to use art already existing from Magic the Gathering. I thought that something that evoked a warrior starting forward with no fear is deserving of a mechanic man with the title of Metallic Malefactor. So I searched around and found art by Benedict Bana titled Battle Scar, and I think it works really well with how I want this card to work and feel. The link to Benedict Bana's DeviantArt page is in the description below if you truly wish to check out more of their work. They really have good art. Now that the art was chosen, that was the last piece to decide on, with what is now my first custom commander for all of you to enjoy. With all of these parts congregated together, here is the final product in all its glory. In the name of Phyrexia, you will die. Before giving my final thoughts, I would like to give out some potential ideas for cards that would work well in a deck based around this commander. This deck focuses a lot on equipment. Here are some cards I think would be very worthwhile. Swiftfoot Boots, Blackblade Reforged, Sword of the Animist, Commander's Plate, Hammer of Nazan, Hero's Blade, and Dowsing Dagger. These are all great equipments that can be used in this deck. Some equipment that would also work particularly well in this style of deck include Colossus Hammer or Skull Clamp. You could even include equipment that only black decks can use, like Mask of Grizzlebrand, Cranial Plating, and even Vorpal Sword. And with any Voltron deck, you can include any of the swords of X and Y, but you don't need them. Now, for my final thoughts. I personally love this commander. It's different, it allows for deck building creativity, and gives Wizards of the Coast more space to explore the artifact theme in black. They've been creating more color-specific artifacts, and if they continue to explore that space, perhaps this card could be created in the near future to utilize these specific artifacts. Mazakiel even has some variation in its playstyle. While it can be used to create large germ tokens or play in the Voltron style, it could also focus on a slower and grindier gameplay style using sacrifice outlets. It can play cards like Mycosynth's Wellspring and Ichor Wellspring to get incremental value from artifacts that aren't creature tokens. However, I do have two major nitpicks on this card. My first nitpick on this card is that I think that the amount of space taken by the reminder text makes the card look a little weird. I'm following the precedent of cards like Bloodlord of Vazgoth, which gives spells an ability and also has the reminder text of what it does. If I left off the reminder text, it would look better as it wouldn't be cluttered and the text could be bigger. It'd be like Sweet Gum Recluse, a card that doesn't have reminder text to explain Cascade. However, I think it's necessary to both follow the precedent of many other cards and make sure newer players do not get confused when first seeing this card. I also don't like that the last ability says artifact card, because this deck is an equipment based deck. Yet having the openness to grab an artifact allows players to build around the second ability, rather than the first, to make a value-based black artifact commander deck, if that's what they want. And because of that, I was fine leaving it this way. Despite all these minor nitpicks, I really like this design for Mazakiel, and I hope you did too. The customization and creativity that can come from creating commander-specific cards is truly amazing. There's a large amount of space still yet unexplored, and I hope that creating these videos can inspire you to think about commanders in different ways and create your own cards to explore ideas you really want to see. Anyways, that's all I have for today on the first episode of Commander Catalogue. If there are any tips or opinions you have on the format or on the style of this video, please share. With this first video I've created and future videos I'll be making, I'll always be looking for ways to make this style of video more entertaining, create better card designs that are more fair, and give you all a video you can enjoy. I'm looking forward to seeing what you all think, and respond to as many people as I can, if I even do get any comments on this video. Now to all of you who got to the end of this video, thank you so much for tuning in and not tuning me out here at Custom Commander Records. I'll see you next time, dear listener.